What's up, everybody? Moha 13 here. Sorry for being a little quiet. Maybe y'all can hear that, maybe not, considering I have headphones in while I'm doing this, but who knows? Right now, I'll figure it out while editing. But I got a whole paper to finish writing after this, along with getting the second video out, which I have to redo because the video got corrupted. Look, it's not been good. I'm just going to lay down a few ground rules. First off, we got two more what ifs coming out. Well, I'm going to try my hand at a Dragon Ball what if. Second of all, I have a Pokemon. That Pokemon rewrite I did, or if I wrote the Pokemon anime, that will be coming back. I can say that. Obviously, I'm going to do it new and stuff like that. Along with the fact that about some ground rules about this. If you had to imagine an animation style, imagine it being by Bob Mappa. Why? Because I wouldn't trust Bones with something like this. But yeah, basically, besides that, let's get on with the video. Now, then we start off about the same as normal. It's the whole spiel. This world has quirks. Yeah, we know how it goes. But we don't start with a Suku. Instead, we start off in the rain, zooming into an alley, with us seeing a brown-skinned boy around the age of 6 at the most, 7 if you wanted to push it. He has white hair and pointed ears, and he's both crying in the rain behind a dumpster until he eventually hears something. With him looking up and seeing a green-haired woman looking at him. She's about 38, 37, and she asks him why he's here alone, with him explaining to her that he doesn't want to go back to the orphanage. The kids there are mean to him, and they bully him because of his ears, and the adults are really mean too. Now then, with this, the lady gives a look of sadness to the boy before telling him her name, Midoriya, and with her asking him his name, and he tells her it's Masaru, with her telling him that's a nice name, and, well, she asks him if he wants to come with her. She wouldn't take him back to the orphanage if he didn't want her to. And so with this, the little boy takes her hands, and they walk, and she walks him back to her apartment. And when they get there, she calls for a boy, Zuko, and a boy the same age as Masaru comes out. The two looking at each other, and Inko telling them to introduce themselves, with Masaru then coming from behind Inko's leg and holding out a small hand. And with this, after the two boys shake hands, we skip forward in time. As right now, we see Masaru, along with the fact that he also has freckles, so I forgot to mention that. Right now, we see Masaru taking a fighting set around the age of 14 against a blonde-headed boy, with him calling him Suki and telling him he's going to have to try a lot better at that, which gets an explosion thrown at him, with things going on, calling him pointed ears before just instead actually walking off, with Masaru taking this as a laugh. And this is when Izuku comes up, asking his brother what he's doing, and if he's messing with Kachan again, with him giving him a replundant yes. And as we then hear Masaru do a voiceover explaining how his life has been. After meeting Izuku a couple of months, well, after being taken in, Inko had adopted him, making him her son, along with her taking him to the doctor and revealing that he was quirkless, and also meeting Katsuki, who, just as a side note, you're gonna see how he is compared to Ken. And with this, the two boys walk to class, with Masaru picking up his soccer ball along the way and juggling it while they get to their main class. With, well, things going off about as similar as they can, and with the teacher telling him that they all want to go to UA, and things like that. And even the Midoriya want to as well, which gets some of the class to look around, but Katsuki also doesn't really come in and try and say anything, with him instead walking out. And with this, the two boys take their leave, with Masaru and Izuku having a small conversation, with him asking Izuku if he gets why he's so adamant on going to the Hero Force, even he be willing to do it, but he's okay with just being a soccer player, as since, well, it might be a little impossible for two quirkless kids to be heroes. With Zuzu giving him a small lecture saying they can still try their best. Things don't have to be like that. And while they're walking and talking, well, the sludge villain shows up. With him, well, getting both of them. I won't lie, they can't do anything here. But obviously, as we know, things don't end for them here, as All Might shows up. And when they wake up, they see he gave them both autographs. Now, if things go really similar here from Ken, Masaru and Izuku both hang on the All Might while he's flying. He's there, but things don't really change. Him and Izuku both told by All Might they can't be a hero, and things keep going all the way the same until we get to the Sludgeville incident. With this, Marsuru ends up chasing right after his brother, with him kicking his soccer ball in one of the other eye, in the Sludgeville in the other eye. Basically, both of them trying to pull Katsuki out of Bakugo out of the sludge. And just with this, obviously, again, All Might shows up and saves the day. And they get scolded by the pro heroes, and things go about normal here again. With the only difference being that again All Might shows up and he tells both of them Marcel will give a pat on the back telling him that looks like he'll be getting into the hero course after all. As Marcel and just things go off the cannon from here. Although Azuku does make his home while Marcel says he's heading to that coffee shop to meet up with her first, and then well basically telling Mom I'll be home late. And when Marsuru gets to said coffee shop, he sees a purple-haired girl with earphone jacks. He sits down right by her, calling her Yoga. As she looks up, and it's Kyokajiro. And basically, we get a small little flashback of, I say, a 12-year-old Marsuru going to a music store and the two shaking hands. They've been friends since. And the two talk, with her also giving him a slight begrudgance on seeing the news, asking him what the hell was he thinking. Him and Izuku, they both could have got killed. And while she's, well, getting on his head, she does throw it at him and Izuku did get a sign from All Might, with her giving him a somewhat dead fake stare, but the two just enjoy their time together and talk. Marshall will bring up how their class has a field trip coming up to a little out in the woods. Him and Izuku are going, so he won't be around for the weekend. Giving her a quick sorry, but telling him that they can make it up. But her just giving him a soft smile and telling him to walk her home. And so he does. And basically the two just talk while walking. Marsuru knows it's not really his place to tell her about All Might, and so he doesn't. And eventually, when they get to her apartment, she gives him a cheek. I don't even know how I started that sentence like that. She gives him a kiss on the cheek, and the two, well, go. And he goes on his merry way, heading to the train station and heading home. Now then, after Marsuru gets home, he works at Inko. He says hi to his mother and stuff like that. Like, I don't really know how to explain it on it, but this is just really normal for him. He does end up heading to his room asking Izuku if he's ready for the field trip tomorrow. With him saying how he's still freaking out about All Might, but he really is. Along with basically the two just sitting down to have a talk. Eventually Marsuru does bring up Izuku's dad, how asking Izuku how he knows that his dad isn't just working overseas. There's no way about that. Izuku's face dropping slightly, ever so slightly, but agreeing. With them both agreeing that, well, Izuku's dad isn't just out overseas. But the two end this conversation off by telling them that they're brothers and they're always going to be there for each other. And with that, the day passes, and the next day we see them standing at a bus, waiting for the teacher to get on. Marsuru seeing Atsuki and putting an arm around his neck. With him calling him pointed ears and telling him to get off him. But the two just listen a little better, which I'll just say here that Katsuki's way less worse than obvious the original, and they're all still somewhat friends. If not, he just really likes annoying him. And with this, they get on the field trip of the bus and ride out. Now, a couple hours later, after they get there, they play. Basically, everyone's relaxing on their phones. Marcelu's about to start texting Kyoka, telling him they made it, but before him and Izuku get called out to go get some more firewood. And so they head out, and they just start talking about how Izuku thinks he's ready for Take All Might's power. And basically, this is when Marcel looks up, his green eyes looking into the sky, and he sees something crashing down, with him immediately asking Izuku what that is, before grabbing his brother and telling him both to move as they jump out the way as it crashes down in front of them. When they look back up, they see a gray circular pie just there. And Marsuru is the one that gets up first, with Izuku calling him back, but he's already his way to there, with the ground below him breaking and him falling into the ditch. Well, crater, ditch, kind of the same thing. So Marsuru reaches out for a hand to grab it, only for it to hop up and attach itself to his left wrist. isn't painful, but it's something different. With Marshall, seeing his veins glow slightly green as he feels it fit on his wrist, snugly like a glove. With him freaking out, telling it to get off, and trying to slam it against the wall and even punch it, but it doesn't really come off. With him eventually even getting up and having a Zuku pull, but thanks to Zuku grabbing it at the same time he is, they end up pressing the button on it. Well, on the watch, popping the dial up as the hourglass symbol crosses into a diamond, showing a silhouette, and Masaru presses it down. As in a green flash, the next thing Izuku knows is that Masaru is a plasma-like being who has black and white pants on, and that watch symbol on his chest. And when he calls out to Masaru, asking him if that's him, he starts freaking out, wondering, well, screaming he's on fire, and just walking, and running around before it stops, drops, and rolling, but eventually he realizes it doesn't hurt, telling Izuku that he's okay, and then he starts playing with said fire. But before he can throw anything, Izuku tells him that maybe he shouldn't throw fireballs in the middle of the forest. And so with that, he doesn't, and basically while they're talking about what's going on, 10 minutes go by, and eventually I hear a beeping noise, and a red flash, Masaru is back to normal, except his eyes are also now red, along with the watch's hourglass, the watch's symbol also being red. Now, they're freaked out about this, but they just pick up the firewood, well, just wondering what's happened, walking, and while they're walking back, the watch ends up turning back to green, along with Masaru's eyes going back to green, well, to their original color. With him saying that's kind of cool, but he then out thinking that maybe they should tell All Might about this. Maybe he knows something. And so with that, when they get back to the camp, the teacher obviously asked them where they were and things like that. But he doesn't really care. I'll be honest, he doesn't. And so with that, a few days passed by with normal, Masaru not telling anyone or about what happened or what's on his wrist. And immediately, by the time the next morning comes, when they get back home, they almost immediately rush to the beach site where All Might is waiting for Zuko, and he's somewhat surprised Masaru showed up, even though, but at first he thinks it's just for moral support, until they start telling All Might about what's happening, with him not knowing what it is, but asking Masaru to demonstrate by transforming for him. And with that, Masaru pops up the dial and slaps down the watch, transforming, except this time not into the fire guy, but instead into a crystal being with a black and white jumpsuit on. His voice comes out crystally, and him letting off a cool. When All Might seeing this, he decides it's best to have Masaru come along and help him train with Azuki, stuff like that. And so thus begins the 10 months of training. Except that Azuki now has a partner along with Masaru figuring out his powers. Well, the watch, which he dubs the Hero Watch, since he doesn't really have an extra name for this. Now then, I say we skip about 7 months, about 7 to 8 months, and where I say 7 to 8 months in, because there are two people here helping clean up the beach, obviously it's going by way faster. And so they're mostly done now, along with the fact that Marcy's gotten pretty good with his transformations. He's even unlocked 3 extra ones, which he finds awesome, along with the fact that Izuku has gone into full study mode about the watch and even has a dedicated notebook to it in all his transformations, which, well, they've come to believe is alien, since, well, they've come to believe it's alien tech from the fact that they also even went back to the forest to find the pod, and they've all come to the conclusion that, yes, it's alien, and that they're only really letting Principal Nezu into this as even though All Might probably, since he trusts Nezu, I think eventually he would bring him into this, and so he has. And so Nezu also knows what's going on. And with this, Masaru, during this time though, Masaru has decided something. With him calling out of training or early, but All Might with this, since again, he's not the one training for one for all. So Masaru heads off, eventually to meet up with Kyoka. And this basically leads to them going on to fully explain to her what's been going on about this sudden quirk. As, yes, they've been able to play this off as a quirk since apparently it's fused completely to his arm. Even his neural system is connected to. Which, if you want to know the lie of what the quirk thing is, he calls it one man army. The quirk that, along with the watch device on his wrist, allows him to transform into multiple different creatures. But something like that. But he decides to explain to Kyoka everything that's going on. Again, still leaving out All Might and Izuku since, again, that's their secret to keep and not his to give out. Now with this, Masaru and Kyoka are just sitting on a bench while talking about this. He's explaining to her, this will at least the things them getting closer and also a connection for both of them. By the end of the day, the two are together. And now let's skip 2 more months to the future, where we're halfway through the ninth month, barely a month and a half left, and finally, the beach, not the beach is fully clean. And so with this, All Might plucks off a piece of his hair and tells Izuku to eat this, which gets Masaru to burst out laughing while Izuku just looks weirded out. But eventually he doesn't. And with this starts their training with Izuku breaking bones immediately and thus getting Recovery Girl involved too. Which during this time also helps Masaru out, asking him what would happen if he hit the dial while still transforming. And with this, Masaru figures out the quick change. Since I already assumed that Izuku already had thoughts about this, but you gotta understand what I mean about him understanding quick change, right? Or at least coming to the conclusion of what could happen. And so with this, Masaru gains the power of quick change, and basically I say about 12 days after Izuku got one for all, Masaru asked Izuku an obvious question. Why not run whatever power percentages that he can have throughout his entire body instead of one thing? Since what, he can use 5% right now, right? So why not just run 5% throughout his entire body instead of just constantly breaking his bones? And thus, with this, full cowling is discovered a lot earlier than in canon. And with this, the rest of the month and half the month goes by with the two boys training and getting better grips on their power. Now then, with this, we can finally start the entrance exam, with Masaru and Izuku heading there, with Izuku being far more confident than he was in the original, since he's had his quirk now for the entire month instead of just, well, a month and a half, or kind of nearly 2 months now. Izuku's already had one fall in this fall for nearly 2 months now. And so, he's still a little nervous to the point he still trips, and thus they meet Osaka Uraraka with her explaining herself. Now then, things go on so more canon than the original. Again, the written exam wouldn't really change because Masaru was here. But things do change because Masaru is placed in a different exam area than Izuku and Katsuki. And so the three end up seeing who can, well, make a bet to see who can get the most points out of all of them before heading their own separate ways. Now then, Masaru starts this one off. As the moment President Mike says go, he rushes activating the Hero Watch and transforming back into his crystal form that he calls Diamond Breaker, as he turns his head into spikes, shooting them at some of the robots, just tearing them apart, with him getting some looks from the teachers side the viewing box, as they come to think that this quirk could be very versatile. And Herschel just claims his Diamond Breaker for a little bit, before eventually launching himself off into a building, and by the time he runs and jumps off, he hits, well, the symbol on his chest, then the crystals disappear. In a green flash, he's now a 12-foot, four-armed, red humanoid, well, in a white t-shirt with black stripes and black pants. Masaru then pulls all four hands back, screaming out forearms before clapping down, causing a sonic wave that destroys multiple robots that also is able to push him back. And when he lands, he just runs through a couple of robots, just tearing them apart further, before eventually seeing throughout one of his four eyes that some guy with yellow hair looks a little stunned. And so he ends up tearing off one of the robot's arms, tucking it right through the head of the one that's at that guy before going over to him and asking him if he's alright. With the guy saying, and with Masaru introducing himself as Masaru Midoriya, and the guy introducing himself as Dinky Kaminari, Masaru transforms back to his human form to not waste time in helping Dinky up, with him asking him what is his quirk. Switching transformations like that is really astounding to him. And so with this, Marsuru explains one-man army, per se, and this is when they hear a giant footstep as they turn to see the zero pointer. But Marsuru getting a smile on his face, telling him to back up as it's hero time, with him activating the hero box once again, spinning the dial before immediately slapping it down, and in a green flash, he's heat blast. With him then immediately taking flight, and while he's in the air, he basically charges up his heat while turning into a tornado, basically burning right through the zero pointer's head before immediately doing some type, before he lands on a building, catching himself on a slight billboard and flying down it, along with him saving a couple of people around. And eventually the exam comes to an end, with him transforming back as the Omnitrix goes back into recharge mode, charging itself. Now then, up in the stands, the teachers are looking really astounded as they read off his work, and basically they're really interested by One Man Army, while All Might is just looking proud as Marsuru comes out and he sees Kyoka, asking her how her exam go, with her thinking it went pretty good, as the two of them then meet up with Izuku and Katsuki, and them all going off explaining how it went for them, with Katsuki saying he most definitely made the most before walking off, with Izuku going off on his own as Marsuru walks Kyoko. Now then, we skip a few days later till they eventually get their note. Now then, Izuku hasn't been a slump here because of the fact that he did good with full counting. Basically, imagine his performance being like it was in Two Heroes. He just went through the robots. And so, when they open their letters with All Might saying they're welcome to this Hero Academy, they then see that Zuku's actually the one on top, as he does also tell Marsuru about him saving that girl that saved him, even if it broke his arm. And just with those 60 extra points of hero points, even though Marsuru got some himself, he's below Izuku, followed by Katsuki at number 3, with Marsuru telling Izuku he owes him a smoothie out. And with that, we skip a couple more days as the first day comes. With, again, things more going so similar. A lot of people in the class look at Marsuru and Izuku because of the fact that they're number 1 and 2, while Katsuki is still the, well, getting into it either, with Marsuru coming up beside him and telling him that it's best not to get with him, as Blasty won't listen. That gets him yelled at by Katsuki. And eventually Aizawa pops up, and again, things go really normal. There won't be really any canon divergence for this first part. Well, a major canon divergence, I should say. There won't be any major canon divergence in this first part until probably the second part, to be honest. But with this, Marsuru is, well, basically Aizawa takes them out to do the exam. They ask about, I really don't know how to explain how the second episode went. Aizawa takes them out, they get to the exam, with Izuku being the one to throw the ball first, with him just reaching probably the point, you know what, never mind, because of the fact that Izuku knows how to work one for all more here. He then folds the power he can into his right finger and then launch it, getting the same score as he can, which his finger is broken, but he's kind of fine. Now then, Izuku does like a spectacularly better because of the fact he can actually control one for all here, while Marsuru, for the strength test, he uses forearms, for the speed test, he gets stuck as wild mutt, but doesn't seem to change the accelerator, he just goes. And by the time everything ends, we get the score points for everyone who wins. Marsuru, who has the overall more score because of his multiple different transformations, gets number 1, followed by Katsuki at number 2, Izuku at 3, and then everyone else is in their canon placements after. And with this, Aizawa tells him that he was joking about the expulsion, and after this, we see Marsuru, Kyoka, and Izuku walking home with Ida and Otako catching up. With them also being wondering how they'll distinguish the two brothers, Marsuru telling them to just call him Marsu, some sort of nickname, and so they don't get him and Izuku mixed up all the time. With them also, Marsuru also does drop it on them that he is adopted before they ask why they look so different. And with this, I'm gonna cut part 1 here. Now then, if you liked it, like or subscribe. Really, it's up to you at the end of the day. It would mean a lot to me if you did subscribe, along with the fact that, again, I need to start making another video and editing and stuff like that. So I'm going to have to go. Moha 13.